Do you ever fume and fret? Here is a picture of yourself if you do. The word fume means to boil up, to blow off, to be agitated. It conjures up images of someone who is seething and distraught. The word fret is equally descriptive. It is reminiscent of a sick child in the night, a petulant and irritating half-cry, half-whine. To fret is a term usually used when talking about children, but unfortunately it frequently describes the emotional reaction of many adults. The Bible advises us to fret not thyself. This is sound advice for people of our time. If we are to have power to live effectively, we just need to stop fuming and fretting and find instead real peace of mind. But how do you go about doing that? The first step is to reduce your pace, or at least the tempo of your pace. We don't usually realize how fast we're driving ourselves. Many people destroy their bodies by this pace, but even worse, they tear their minds and souls to shreds as well. The pace at which we live is determined by our thinking habits. It's possible for someone to live a quiet, physical existence and yet maintain a fast tempo emotionally. When the mind goes rushing on pell-mell from one feverish attitude to another, it becomes feverish too. This overstimulation produces fatigue, frustration, and emotional illness. And if this effect is so physically and emotionally pronounced, imagine what it does to that deep inner essence of the personality known as the soul. It is impossible to have peace of soul if one's tempo is so feverishly accelerated. God simply won't go that fast. He will not endeavor to keep up with you. He says, in effect, go ahead if you must with this foolish pace, and when you are worn out, I will offer you my healing. But I can make your life rich if only you will slow down and live and move and have your being in me. You see, God moves imperturbably, slowly, and with perfect organization. The only wise rate at which to live is at God's rate. God gets things done, and they are done right, and He does them without hurrying. He neither fumes nor frets. He is peaceful, and therefore very efficient. This same peace is offered to us. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Sometimes I wonder if this generation isn't so accustomed to tension and noise that many aren't comfortable without it. The deep quietness of woods and valleys, so well known to our forefathers, is almost an alien state to them. It seems that the tempo of their lives doesn't allow them to draw upon the marvelous sources of peace and quietness that the physical world offers. One summer afternoon, my wife and I went for a long walk in the woods. We were stopping at a beautiful lake mountain house, which is set in one of the finest natural parks in this country, 7,500 acres of virgin mountainside, in the middle of which is a lake that is set like a gem in the forest. Here you come out of the deep woods onto some noble promontory and rest your eyes on great valleys set among hills, rock-ribbed and ancient as the sun. These woods, mountains, and valleys constitute what ought to be a sure retreat from every confusion in this world. On this afternoon as we walked, there was a mixture of summer showers and sunlit hours. We were drenched and started to fret about it a bit because it took the press out of our clothes. Then we told each other that it doesn't hurt a human being to get drenched with clean rainwater, that the rain feels cool and fresh on one's face, and that you can always sit in the sun and dry yourself out. So we walked under the trees and talked, and then fell silent. We were listening deeply to the quietness. In a strict sense, the woods are never still. There is tremendous activity always in the process. But on this beautiful afternoon, nature's sounds were quiet, harmonious. Nature was laying its hand of healing quietness upon us, and we could actually feel the tension being drawn off. Just as we were falling under this spell, the faint sounds of something passing for music came to us. It was a nervous, high-strung music, so popular these days. And presently through the woods came 3 young people, and one of them was lugging a portable radio. They were 3 young city people out for a walk in the woods, and tragically enough were bringing their noise along with them. They were nice folk, too, for they stopped and we had a pleasant talk with them. It occurred to me to ask them to turn that thing off and listen to the music of the woods. But I didn't feel it was my business to instruct them, and finally they went on their way. We commented on the loss they were incurring, that they could pass through this peacefulness and not give ear to the music that is as old as the world, harmony and melody the like of which man has never equaled, the song of the wind through the trees, the sweet notes of birds singing their hearts out, the whole background of the music of the spheres. Remember the words of Jesus, "Come ye yourselves apart into a desert place and rest a while." Frequently enough, I've had to remind myself to practice this truth. But we must discipline ourselves to quietness if we expect its benefits in our lives. To help reduce the tension that seems to dominate people everywhere, you can start by reducing your pace. To do that, you will need to slow down and quiet down. Do not fume. Do not fret. Practice being peaceful. Practice the peace of God, which passeth all understanding. Then note the quiet sense of power that wells up within you. A physician gave some rather unusual advice to a patient of his, one of those aggressive, go-getter types of businessman. This man had been telling him that he takes his briefcase home with him every night, packed with important work that must get done right away. When the doctor asked if someone else couldn't help him with it, the man snapped, "Nope, I'm the only one who can do it. Everything depends on me." The doctor asked, "If I write a prescription, will you follow it?" This, believe it or not, was the prescription. His patient was to take off 2 hours every working day and go for a long walk. Then he was to take off a half day a week and spend that half day in a cemetery. In astonishment, the patient demanded, "Why should I spend a half day in a cemetery?" "Because," answered the doctor, "I want you to wander around and look at the gravestones of men who are there permanently. I want you to meditate on the fact that many of them are there because they thought, even as you do, that the whole world rested on their shoulders. Meditate on the solemn fact that when you get there permanently, the world will go on just the same. There are times when it is essential to check our headlong pace, and it must be emphasized that the only way to stop is to stop. Believe me, I know personally from experience. I once went to a certain city to give a lecture and was met at the plane by a committee. I was rushed to a bookstore where I had an autographing party, and then to another bookstore where another autographing party was held. Then they rushed me to a luncheon. After rushing through the luncheon, I was rushed to a meeting. After the meeting, I was rushed back to the hotel, where I changed my clothes and was rushed back to a reception, where I met several hundred people and drank 3 glasses of fruit punch. Then I was rushed back to the hotel and told I had 20 minutes to dress for dinner. When I was getting dressed, the phone rang and somebody said, "Hurry, hurry, we must rush down to dinner." Excitedly I chattered, "I will rush right down." I rushed from the room and was so excited that I could scarcely get the key into the lock. Hastily I checked myself to make sure I was completely dressed and rushed toward the elevator. All of a sudden, I stopped. I was out of breath. I asked myself, just what is this all about? What is the meaning of this ceaseless rush? This is ridiculous. Then I declared independence and said, I don't care if I go to dinner or not. I do not care whether I make a speech. I do not have to go to this dinner, and I do not have to give a speech. So deliberately and slowly I walked back to my room and took my time about opening the door. I telephoned the man downstairs and said, if you want to eat, go ahead. If you want to save a place for me, I will be down after a while when I'm good and ready. But I'm not going to rush anymore. So I removed my coat, sat down, took off my shoes, put my feet up on the table, and just sat. Then I opened the Bible and very slowly read aloud the 121st Psalm. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. I closed the book and had a little talk with myself, saying, come on now, son, start living a slower pace and a more relaxed life. And then I affirmed, God is here and his peace is touching me. I don't need anything to eat, I reasoned. I eat too much anyway. Besides, the dinner will probably not be very good, and if I am quiet now, I will give a better speech at 8 o'clock. So I sat there resting and praying for a while. I shall never forget the sense of peace and personal mastery I had when I walked out of that room. I had the glorious feeling of having overcome something, of having taken control of myself emotionally. And when I reached the dining room, the others had just finished the first course. All I missed was the soup, which by general consent was no great loss. This incident was an amazing encounter with the healing presence of Almighty God. I gained this experience simply by stopping, by quietly reading the Bible, by sincerely praying, and by thinking some peaceful thoughts for a few moments. To attain emotional control, the daily practice of healing techniques is essential. Emotional control cannot be gained in any magical or easy way. The only sure method is by working at it regularly and by developing creative faith. To develop a calm control, it is necessary to think calmness. For as I've said before, the body responds sensitively to the type of thoughts that pass through the mind. It is also true that the mind can be quieted by first making the body quiet. Don't pace the floor. Don't wring your hands. Don't pound or shout or argue or walk up and down. Don't let yourself get worked up into a dither. I was once in a meeting where a discussion was going on which finally became rather bitter. Tempers were getting frayed, and some of the participants were decidedly on edge. Sharp remarks were exchanged. Suddenly one man got up, took off his coat, opened his collar, and lay down on a couch. Everyone was astonished, and someone asked if he felt ill. "No," he said, "I feel fine. But I'm beginning to get mad. And I've learned that it is difficult to get mad lying down." We all laughed, and the tension was broken. So I urge you to slow down. For whatever you really want will be there when you arrive, if you work toward it without stress, without pressing. If proceeding under God's guidance and in His smooth and unhurried tempo it is not there, then it was not supposed to be there. If you miss it, perhaps you should have missed it. Try to develop a normal, natural, God-ordered pace. Practice and preserve mental quiet. Learn the art of letting go of all nervous excitement. To do this, stop at intervals and affirm, "I now relinquish nervous excitement. It is flowing from me now. I am at peace."
If you have a tendency to fume and fret, here are some exercises that can help you achieve a more peaceful inner tempo. 1. Sit relaxed in a chair. Yield yourself completely to the chair. Starting with your toes and proceeding to the top of your head, conceive of every part of your body as relaxing. Affirm this relaxed state by saying, "My toes are relaxed, my fingers are relaxed, my facial muscles are relaxed," and so on. 2. Think of your mind as the surface of a lake in a storm, tossed by waves and whipped by the wind. Then imagine the waves subside and the surface placid and smooth. 3. Spend 2 or 3 minutes thinking of the most beautiful and peaceful scenes you have ever beheld. A mountain at sunset, for example, or a deep valley filled with the hush of early morning, or a woods at noonday, or moonlight upon rippling waters. In your memory, relive these scenes. 4. Make a mental list of times in your life when you've been conscious of God's watchful care. Recall how He brought things out right and took care of you when you were worried and anxious. Then recite aloud this line from an old hymn. "So long thy power hath kept me, sure it still will lead me on." 5. Repeat the following quotation, which has a great power to relax and quiet the mind. "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." Repeat this aloud if possible, so that by the end of the day you will have said it many times. Conceive of these words as active, vital substances that permeate your mind and send a healing balm to every area of your heart and mind.